The archives of the Galactic Military Academy stretched endlessly through crystalline corridors, their walls humming with the stored memories of 1,000 worlds. Admiral Koreth's 6 eyes scanned the holographic displays with growing unease as his research team compiled the deadliest battle records from the past century. Each engagement had claimed hundreds, sometimes thousands of lives from various species across the galaxy. "Sir, we found something unusual," called out Lieutenant Vex, her blue-scaled fingers dancing across the control interface. The Altarian's voice carried a note of confusion that made Koreth's primary heart skip a beat. In his 40 years of military service, he had learned to trust that tone. It usually preceded discoveries that changed everything. The main display flickered, then resolved into a series of battle reports. Each one bore the crimson seal of maximum casualties, the kind of engagements that military historians used as cautionary tales. The Battle of Zirion Prime, where the Krell Armada had been decimated by unknown attackers. The massacre at Vortex Station, where an entire fleet had vanished without sending a single distress signal. The Siege of Darkspace, where survivors spoke of shadows that moved between stars. "What am I looking at, Lieutenant?" Koreth asked, though something in his gut already knew the answer would disturb him. "Cross-reference survivor reports, sir, from every major catastrophic engagement in the past 50 years. Vex's voice grew quieter. "There's a pattern." The hologram shifted, highlighting a single name that appeared in every report. Specialist Sarah Chen, Human Coalition Forces. The same human had been present at massacres spanning half the galaxy, battles separated by years and light years, conflicts that should have been impossible for any single being to survive. Koreth's mandibles clicked nervously. Humans had only joined the Galactic Coalition 15 years ago, their species considered physically inferior by most standards. They were shorter than Altarians, weaker than Krell, and lacked the natural armor of the Thrax, yet somehow, this particular human had survived encounters that had killed seasoned warriors from species bred for war. "Perhaps it's a clerical error," suggested Captain Thorne, the Krell's deep voice rumbling through the chamber. Multiple humans with the same designation, but Vex was already shaking her head, pulling up biometric data. "Genetic markers match perfectly, sir. Same retinal pattern, same DNA signature. It's definitely the same individual." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the archive systems. Koreth studied the battle reports more closely, noting details that had been overlooked in the initial investigations. In each case, the human appeared in the records as a low-ranking specialist, assigned to routine duties. Communications tech at Zirion Prime, supply coordinator at Vortex Station, environmental systems monitor during the Darkspace siege. "Pull up her current assignment," Koreth ordered, though he suspected what they would find. The display changed, showing a transfer order dated just 3 days ago. Specialist Chen had been reassigned to the research vessel Discovery, currently investigating reports of missing ships in the Andromeda Drift, the same region where 2 exploration fleets had vanished in the past month. Lieutenant Vex looked up from her console, her scaled face pale with realization. "Sir, the Discovery sent their last transmission 8 hours ago. They were investigating a debris field when she didn't need to finish." They all understood the implication. Koreth made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Prepare a search and rescue operation. Full battle group, and I want every piece of classified information we have on Specialist Sarah Chen." As his staff scrambled to carry out orders, Koreth stared at the human's service photo. She appeared unremarkable by any standard. Medium height, brown hair pulled back in regulation style, dark eyes that revealed nothing. Yet something about those eyes bothered him. They held a depth that seemed wrong for someone barely 30 standard years old. The first classified files arrived within the hour, and they painted a picture that made no sense. Sarah Chen had been born on Earth during the final days of humanity's first contact period. Her parents had been agricultural workers, her childhood unremarkable. She had enlisted in the human military at 18 and served with distinction but not excellence. Her psychological evaluations were consistently average, her physical performance adequate but not outstanding. Yet buried in the medical files, Koreth found anomalies. Specialist Chen had survived injuries that should have been fatal. During the Zirion Prime engagement, she had been exposed to hard vacuum for nearly 10 minutes before rescue. Medical reports indicated massive cellular damage, Yet she had recovered completely within 72 hours. At Vortex Station, she had been found in a section of the station exposed to levels of radiation that should have killed her instantly. Again, full recovery within days. The dark space siege had left her with injuries from what medics described as unknown energy weapons, yet she had returned to duty with no lasting effects. Captain Thorne leaned over Korath's shoulder, studying the files. These readings don't make sense. No human should be able to survive this level of trauma, unless she isn't entirely human. Korath murmured, the words chilling him even as he spoke them. The possibility had occurred to all of them, but no one wanted to voice it. Genetic modification was strictly regulated by coalition law, and the kind of alterations that would allow this level of survivability were beyond current technology. Unless someone had access to resources and knowledge that the coalition didn't possess. Sir, Vex called out urgently. Long-range sensors are detecting the discovery. They're intact. The main display shifted to show the research vessel floating dead in space, its hull scarred but unbroken. No life signs, no power signatures, no response to hails, just like every other ship that had encountered whatever haunted the Andromeda Drift. Prep the assault shuttles, Korath ordered. Full environment suits, maximum armament. If Specialist Chen is still alive in there, we're going to find out exactly what makes her so special. As the battle group moved toward the silent vessel, Korath couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Something had been systematically destroying ships in this region. Something that left vessels intact but crews dead or missing. And somehow a single human woman had survived encounters with this force across the galaxy. The question that terrified him was simple. Was she the prey, or was she the predator? The assault shuttle Retribution cut through the void toward the derelict research vessel, its hull gleaming against the star field of the Andromeda Drift. Admiral Korath checked his weapon systems for the third time, his tactical display showing 15 other shuttles in formation around them. The combined firepower could level a small moon, yet he couldn't shake the feeling it wouldn't be enough. Life signs? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Negative on coalition species, reported Sergeant Major Drix, the Threx's armored fingers working the scanner controls. But there's something else. Energy readings I don't recognize. Through the viewport, the Discovery grew larger, its research pods and sensor arrays clearly visible. The ship looked perfect from the outside. No hull breaches, no blast damage, no signs of struggle. Whatever had happened here had been surgical in its precision. Docking Bay 7 is open, called the pilot. Atmospheric readings show standard mix, normal pressure. It's like they're waiting for us. The shuttle slid into the docking bay with practiced ease, magnetic clamps engaging with solid thuds that echoed through the hull. Korath's tactical visor showed the bay as empty, sterile, normal in every way except for the complete absence of any crew. 20 Coalition Marines moved through the ship in perfect formation, their varied species working together with practiced efficiency. Krell heavy troopers took point, their natural armor gleaming under the emergency lighting. Altarian scouts flanked them, energy rifles ready. Threx combat engineers monitored for traps and environmental hazards. The ship's corridors were pristine. No bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. Meals sat half-finished in the galley, their surfaces covered with a thin film of ice crystals. Personal belongings remained exactly where their owners had left them. It was as if the entire crew had simply vanished mid-action. Bridge clear, reported Alpha Team. Engineering clear came from Beta. Medical bay clear, called Gamma. One by one, each section of the ship was reported secure and empty. Korath felt his unease growing with each update. Ships didn't simply lose their crews. Even if every person had been spaced, there would be evidence, struggle marks, emergency protocols activated, something to indicate what had happened. Sir? Sergeant Drix's voice carried a note of confusion. Personal quarters for Specialist Chen. You need to see this. Korath made his way through the ship's corridors, noting details that his tactical training had burned into his memory. The emergency blast doors were open, suggesting no hull breach. The internal security system showed no alerts or activation logs. Even the ship's cat, a gray tabby named Einstein, was missing from its usual spot in the observation lounge. Chen's quarters were located in the junior staff section, a small room barely large enough for a bunk, desk, and personal storage locker. It looked exactly like what you'd expect from a low-ranking specialist, neat, functional, impersonal. except for one detail that made Korath's blood run cold. The walls were covered with star charts. Not standard navigation charts, but hand-drawn maps showing star systems, trade routes, and military installations. Red marks indicated the locations of every major battle in the past 50 years. Lines connected them in patterns that suggested careful planning, methodical progression. But it was the desk that truly disturbed him. Spread across its surface were detailed files on coalition fleet movements, classified battle plans, and personnel records for senior officers across a dozen species, information that a communications specialist should never have accessed, let alone possessed in hard copy. How long has she had access to this intelligence? Korath asked, though he suspected the answer would be worse than he imagined. Drix was scanning the files with his detection equipment, his armored face unreadable behind his tactical visor. Some of these documents are dated from before she transferred to this ship. Sir, she's been collecting classified information for years. The implication hit Korath like a plasma blast. They weren't dealing with a survivor of alien attacks. They were looking at evidence of a spy. Someone who had systematically positioned herself at the sites of major disasters, someone with access to classified information that could have allowed her to predict or even cause those disasters. Pull everything, Korath ordered. Every file, every data pad, every personal item. I want a complete intelligence workup on. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the corridor in red light that made everything look like it was covered in blood. The ship's automated systems began cycling through diagnostic routines, and somewhere in the distance, Korath could hear the subtle hum of the main reactor spinning up. Movement on Deck 3, called Alpha Team. Single contact, human-sized, heading for the main computer core. Korath felt his pulse quicken. All teams converge on Deck 3. Non-lethal capture if possible. I want answers. The hunt through the ship's corridors felt like stalking a ghost. The contact appeared on sensors for moments at a time before vanishing again, always staying just ahead of the search teams. Motion detectors triggered randomly, environmental systems cycled on and off without explanation, and the ship's computer core began accessing files that should have been locked down. Contact in. Engineering, reported Beta Team. She's accessing the main database. Lock down all external communications, Korath ordered. Whatever she's looking for, she doesn't transmit it. But when the teams reached engineering, they found only empty corridors and workstations. The main computer terminal showed evidence of recent access, but the logs had been wiped. Whoever they were chasing knew coalition systems better than most of the technicians who built them. Sir, came a new voice over the comm system. Not one of his Marines, but female, with the subtle accent that marked human speech. We need to talk. Korath activated his communicator, keeping his weapon ready. Specialist Chen, I presume. Where are you? Safe, came the reply. For now. But you need to understand something, Admiral. You're not here to rescue me. You're here because I needed to get your attention. The statement was so unexpected that Korath almost dropped his weapon. Explain. The battles you've been reviewing, the ship disappearances, the dead crews, they're not random attacks. Someone has been systematically eliminating coalition assets, and they've been using insider information to do it. On his tactical display, Korath could see his teams moving through the ship, still searching for the source of the transmission. But something in Chen's voice made him hesitate before ordering them to continue. If that's true, then why are you at every site? Why do you survive when everyone else dies? The silence that followed lasted long enough that Korath wondered if the connection had been severed. When Chen finally spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed impossible for someone so young. Because I'm hunting them, she said, and I've finally found their next target. Admiral Korath ordered his teams to hold position as the weight of Chen's words settled over him. The empty corridors of the Discovery suddenly felt less like a crime scene and more like a carefully constructed stage. Every detail, from the missing crew to the intelligence files, began to take on new meaning. You're claiming to be some kind of counterintelligence operative? Korath asked, keeping his weapon trained on the shadows. Your service record shows nothing of the kind. My service record shows exactly what it was designed to show. Chen's voice came from speakers throughout the ship, making it impossible to pinpoint her location. Low-level specialist, unremarkable performance. The kind of person who gets assigned to routine duties and forgotten about. Through his tactical visor, Korath watched his teams methodically searching each compartment. The Krell-heavy troopers moved with surprising grace through the narrow corridors, while Altarian scouts used their natural agility to check areas others couldn't reach. Yet somehow a single human was evading detection by some of the galaxy's finest warriors. The crew of this ship, Korath pressed. What happened to them? They're safe, Chen replied immediately. Hidden in a shielded compartment I had installed during the last maintenance cycle. The energy signatures your scanners detected are from life support systems, keeping them in suspended animation. Sergeant Drix's voice crackled through the comm. Sir, detecting power fluctuations in Section 7. Could be a hidden compartment. Check it out, Korath ordered, then returned his attention to the mysterious human. Why the elaborate deception? Why not simply contact Coalition Command with your evidence? The bitter laugh that came through the speakers made several of his Marines visibly tense. Because Coalition Command has been compromised. The enemy I've been tracking has access to our highest levels of government and military leadership. Every official investigation, every security review, every classified briefing, they know about it before the ink is dry. The implications of that statement hit Korath like cold steel. If Chen was telling the truth, then bringing this information through normal channels would be suicide. Worse, it would alert the enemy that their operation had been discovered. Beta team to command, came Drix's voice. We've found them. 37 crew members in induced hibernation. Vital signs are stable, but they'll need immediate medical attention. Relief flooded through Korath, followed immediately by new questions. If Chen had saved the crew, why maintain the deception of their disappearance? Why allow Coalition forces to believe they were dead? Because the real enemy needed to believe their attack was successful, Chen answered as if reading his thoughts. They've been watching, waiting to see if anyone would investigate too closely. Your arrival here was expected. On cue, Korath's long-range sensors began screaming warnings. Multiple contacts were approaching at high speed, their signatures unlike anything in Coalition databases. The vessels moved with impossible precision, executing maneuvers that should have torn any known ship apart. All teams, immediate extraction, Korath ordered. We have incoming hostiles. Negative. Chen's voice cut through the evacuation orders. If you run now, they'll know we've made contact. Everything I've worked for will be lost. Through the viewports, Korath could see the approaching ships. They were sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to bend light around their hulls. No visible weapons, no obvious propulsion systems, yet they moved through space like living creatures swimming through water. What are those things? He asked, watching his tactical computer fail to get weapon locks on the approaching vessels. Ships built by the architects, Chen replied. An ancient race that went extinct millions of years ago. Or so we thought. The lead vessel glided alongside the Discovery with predatory grace. Korath expected weapons fire, boarding action, some kind of aggressive move. Instead, the strange ship simply waited as if observing them. They're studying us, Chen continued. Learning our tactics, our technology, our weaknesses. Every battle they win gives them more information to use against the Coalition. But you survived their attacks, Korath pointed out. How? Because I wasn't fighting them, came the reply. I was learning from them. Every encounter taught me something new about their capabilities, their goals, their methods. And I discovered something that changes everything. The architect ship began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns along its hull. The lights moved in complex sequences that reminded Korath of neural activity, as if the ship itself was alive and thinking. They're not trying to destroy the Coalition, Chen said. They're trying to communicate with us. The attacks, the missing crews, the dead fleets, it's all been a test. They're looking for someone who can understand their language. Korath felt his worldview shifting like tectonic plates. You're saying these are first contact protocols? They've been killing thousands of people to find someone who speaks their language? Not their language, Chen corrected. Their way of thinking. The architects don't communicate with words or symbols. They communicate through survival, through adaptation, through the ability to transcend normal limitations. The strange vessel's pulse patterns changed, becoming more complex and rapid. Other architect ships began to arrive, surrounding the Discovery and Korath's battle group. Yet still no weapons were fired, no aggressive moves made. That's why I survived when others didn't, Chen continued. Not because I'm stronger or smarter or better equipped. Because I learned to think like they do, to see survival not as avoiding death, but as embracing change. Korath looked at his tactical display, showing coalition ships surrounded by alien vessels of unknown capability. His training screamed at him to fire first, to protect his forces from the threat. But something in Chen's voice made him hesitate. "What do they want?" he asked. "To share their knowledge," Chen replied. "The architects achieved something that no other species has managed. They learned to transcend their physical forms while retaining their consciousness. They're offering to teach us the same thing." The pulsing lights on the nearest architect ship suddenly synchronized with similar patterns appearing on the Discovery's hull. Somehow Chen had established direct communication with the alien vessels. "But there's a problem," she continued. "The offer comes with a price. To learn their secrets, we have to prove we're worthy. We have to show that we can evolve beyond our current limitations." "What kind of limitations?" Korath asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. "The need for physical bodies," Chen said. "The architects are offering to help us transcend death itself. But to do it, we have to be willing to leave our old forms behind." The implications of that statement hit every coalition officer like a hammer blow. The architects weren't offering to upgrade their technology or share their weapons. They were offering to fundamentally change what it meant to be alive. And somehow a single human woman had become the bridge between two entirely different forms of existence. The silence that followed Chen's revelation was broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the distant pulse of architect ships. Admiral Korath stared at his tactical display, watching alien vessels that could reshape the very nature of existence itself. The weight of first contact with a transcendent species pressed down on him like the gravity of a collapsing star. "Show yourself," Korath demanded. "If we're going to discuss the future of galactic civilization, I want to see who I'm talking to." The ship's lighting shifted and a section of the corridor wall simply dissolved. Sarah Chen stepped through what had appeared to be solid metal, her form flickering slightly as if she existed partially in another dimension. She wore standard coalition fatigues, but there was something fundamentally different about her presence, a depth that seemed to extend beyond physical space. "You've been modified," Korath stated, keeping his weapon lowered but ready. "By them." Chen nodded, her dark eyes holding galaxies of knowledge that shouldn't fit in any human mind. "The process began during my first encounter with the architects. Each subsequent contact has brought me closer to their state of existence." Sergeant Drix's voice crackled through the comm from elsewhere in the ship. "Sir, the hibernating crew is showing unusual neural activity. Their brain patterns are changing." "The transcendence process doesn't require conscious consent," Chen explained. "Prolonged exposure to architect technology gradually elevates consciousness to their level. The crew of this ship has been unconsciously preparing for the transition." Korath felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "You drugged them, put them to sleep so they could be transformed without their knowledge." "I saved them," Chen corrected firmly. "The alternative was death. The architects don't negotiate with species they consider evolutionarily stagnant. They test, and if you fail the test, they eliminate you as a potential threat to galactic stability." Through the viewport, Korath could see more architect ships arriving, dozens of them, their organic hulls pulsing with synchronized patterns of light that created a hypnotic display across the starfield. Each vessel was unique, as if grown rather than built, yet they moved together with perfect coordination. "How many tests have there been?" Korath asked. "Every major battle in the past 50 years, Chen replied. "The Zerion Prime Massacre, Vortex Station, Dark Space, dozens of smaller encounters. Each one was designed to identify individuals capable of transcendent thinking. And you were the only one who passed." "I was the only one who understood what was being asked," Chen corrected. "The tests weren't about physical survival or tactical brilliance. They were about the willingness to abandon everything you thought you knew about reality." Admiral Korath's tactical training warred with the impossible situation he found himself in. Every instinct told him to classify Chen as a traitor, the architects as an invasion force, and this entire scenario as an elaborate attack on coalition space. Yet the evidence suggested something far more complex. "The intelligence files in your quarters," he said. "You've been tracking coalition fleet movements for years." "To predict where the architects would strike next," Chen confirmed. "Their tests follow specific patterns based on species psychology and technological development. I needed to be present at each encounter to document the process and look for other potential candidates." "Other humans like you?" Chen's expression grew sad. "Humans are uniquely suited for transcendence. Your species lacks the rigid psychological structures that prevent most aliens from adapting to new forms of existence. But even among humans, very few can make the transition successfully. The implications of that statement sent shockwaves through Korath's understanding of interspecies relations. Humans had been considered the weakest members of the coalition, barely advanced enough to warrant inclusion in galactic civilization. Now he was being told they were actually the most evolutionarily flexible species in known space. The coalition leadership knows about this, Korath realized. That's why humans were fast-tracked for membership despite their technological limitations. Some know, Chen confirmed. Others suspect. But the full truth has been classified at levels so high that even I don't have complete access. A new voice joined the conversation, transmitted directly into their minds without using any communications equipment. The architect presence felt vast and ancient, like standing at the edge of an infinite ocean. The small form-thinking patterns show promise, the voice said in concepts rather than words. The flesh-bound explorer has prepared well. Will the many-species collective accept elevation beyond death? Korath's mind reeled as he tried to process direct telepathic communication. The architect consciousness felt utterly alien yet somehow familiar, as if it contained echoes of every species that had ever achieved transcendence. They're asking if the coalition will accept their offer, Chen translated, though Korath had somehow understood the meaning himself. To evolve beyond physical existence and join the galactic community of transcended species. How many others are there? Korath asked, directing the question toward the architect presence. Countless many, came the reply. Those who learn to become more than flesh and bone span time beyond counting. Your species collective shows exceptional adaptation potential. The tactical display showed coalition reinforcements approaching, 3 full battle groups responding to Korath's earlier distress signal. In minutes, the region would be flooded with warships whose commanders had no understanding of the true situation. If our fleets attack, Korath said, what happens? The architects defend themselves, Chen replied grimly. And their defense capabilities make our most advanced weapons look like stone tools. The incoming battle groups would be vaporized in seconds. Violence patterns indicate readiness for elevation beyond flesh is insufficient, the architect voice confirmed. Destruction of threat sources becomes necessary for stability. Korath found himself facing the most important decision in galactic history. He could maintain standard protocols, treat this as a hostile first contact situation, and watch his civilization be erased by beings so advanced they viewed physical matter as a temporary inconvenience. Or he could trust a human spy who claimed to be facilitating the evolution of consciousness itself. What exactly are they offering? He asked. Chen's form flickered again, becoming more translucent as she demonstrated her own transitional state. Freedom from death, disease, the limitations of physical form. Access to knowledge accumulated over millions of years. The ability to exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. At the cost of our bodies, our physical existence. At the cost of the illusion that physical existence is all there is, Chen corrected. The transcended don't lose their individuality or memories. They become more than they were, not less. The approaching coalition fleets were now visible on long-range sensors. Admiral Korath had perhaps 10 minutes before the situation escalated beyond any possibility of peaceful resolution. Can you prove it? He asked. Can you show me that transcendence is real and not just an elaborate form of death? Chen smiled, and for a moment her entire form shifted into pure light. I can do better than that. I can show you what lies beyond the boundaries of flesh and time. Admiral Korath felt reality dissolve around him as Chen's light form touched his consciousness. The familiar weight of his physical body vanished, replaced by a sensation of infinite expansion. His awareness spread beyond the confines of the ship, beyond the local star system, stretching across dimensions he had never imagined existed. Through transcended perception, Korath could see the true nature of the galaxy. What had appeared to be empty space was actually teeming with consciousness. Billions of transcended beings who had evolved beyond physical form eons ago. They moved through reality like currents in an ocean, their thoughts creating ripples that influenced the development of younger species across countless worlds. This is impossible, Korath's consciousness whispered, though he no longer possessed vocal cords to speak with. Impossibility is a limitation of flesh-bound thinking, came Chen's response, her mental voice warm with understanding. You're seeing the galaxy as it truly is. not a collection of isolated worlds, but a living network of consciousness that spans space and time. Through this expanded awareness, Korath could perceive the approaching coalition battle groups as brilliant sparks of untranscended life. Each ship contained hundreds of individual consciousnesses, their thoughts focused on duty, fear, and the familiar comfort of following orders. They had no idea they were about to encounter something that would fundamentally challenge their understanding of existence itself. The pattern repeats. The vast architect presence explained, its thoughts encompassing the history of galactic civilization. Young species achieve limited technology, explore their local region, encounter transcended consciousness, and face the choice moment that defines their future. Korath could see it now, the endless cycle of species rising from their home worlds, reaching toward the stars, and eventually confronting the reality that physical existence was just the first stage of consciousness development. Some chose transcendence and joined the galactic community. Others rejected the offer and were peacefully contained until they died out naturally. Contained? Korath asked, focusing his transcended perception on that particular concept. Images flooded his consciousness. Dozens of species that had refused transcendence, their worlds quietly isolated by barriers of altered space-time. They continued to exist within their chosen limitations, never knowing that the rest of the galaxy had moved beyond their level of development. The Krell Empire, Chen showed him, revealing the truth about the Coalition's most aggressive member species. They encountered the Architects 5,000 years ago and chose warfare over evolution. Their entire civilization exists within a pocket dimension that mimics normal space. The revelation staggered Korath's expanded consciousness. The Krell, with their vast fleets and militant culture, were actually a contained species living in what amounted to an elaborate simulation. Their wars, their conquests, their proud military traditions, all of it taking place within artificial boundaries designed to let them maintain their chosen way of life. The Altarians chose partial transcendence. The architect presence continued. They retained physical form but gained extended consciousness. Your species shows potential for complete elevation. Korath began to understand the scope of what was being offered. Humanity wasn't just being invited to join an alliance or share technology. They were being asked to evolve into something that would make their current existence seem like a brief childhood phase. The Coalition, he realized, it's all a testing ground. Preparation space, Chen confirmed. Young species need to interact with others before they can understand the choice being offered. The Coalition provides that experience while keeping transcended civilizations hidden. Through his expanded perception, Korath could see the true purpose of every major galactic institution. The trading networks that seemed to drive economic development were actually systems for evaluating species readiness. The exploration programs that mapped unknown regions were tests of curiosity and adaptability. Even the military conflicts that had claimed so many lives were carefully orchestrated challenges, designed to identify individuals capable of transcendent thinking. Sarah, he said, focusing his consciousness toward her light form. How long have you known? Since Zerion Prime, she replied, sharing memories of her first encounter with architect consciousness. The experience of dying and being reconstructed at the quantum level changed my fundamental understanding of what life means. Korath experienced her memories directly the moment when Chen's physical form had been dissolved by architect technology, her consciousness preserved and enhanced before being given a new body. Every subsequent encounter had refined the process, gradually elevating her awareness until she could serve as a bridge between transcended and untranscended consciousness. The approaching flesh-bound warriors must choose, the architect presence indicated, drawing attention back to the Coalition battle groups. Immediate decision is required. Korath snapped back to normal awareness, his consciousness slamming into his physical form with jarring intensity. The familiar weight of his body felt strange and limiting after experiencing transcended existence. Chen stood before him, once again appearing mostly human, though her eyes now held depths that seemed to extend beyond normal space. How long was I? He began. 3 seconds, Chen replied. Transcended consciousness operates outside normal temporal flow. You experienced years of revelation in the time it takes a heart to beat. Admiral Korath's tactical display showed the Coalition fleets were now less than 5 minutes away. 3 battle groups, each containing enough firepower to sterilize a planet, were about to encounter forces so advanced that their weapons might as well be toys. "Can you contact the fleet commanders directly?" Korath asked. "Not without triggering their psychological defense mechanisms," Chen replied. "Direct transcended contact drives most untranscended minds insane. That's why intermediaries like me are necessary." "The warrior minds approach with destruction intent," the architect presence warned. "Choice moment arrives. Will the flesh-bound collective accept elevation opportunity or require containment protocols?" Korath understood the stakes with terrible clarity. If he could convince the approaching fleets to stand down, humanity might achieve transcendence and join the galactic community as evolved beings. If he failed, his entire species would be contained within artificial boundaries, living out their existence in a simulated reality, while the rest of the galaxy moved beyond their comprehension. "Open a channel to all Coalition vessels," he ordered his communications officer. "Priority Alpha, command authorization." The response came immediately from Admiral Thex, commander of the lead battle group. "Korath, what's your status?" "Our sensors show unknown vessels surrounding your position." Korath took a breath that might determine the future of consciousness itself. "Stand down all weapons. Do not engage the unknown vessels. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but the fate of our entire civilization depends on your response." Through the viewport, he could see the architect's ships pulse with anticipation. Hundreds of transcended consciousnesses watched and waited as one untranscended human prepared to speak words that would echo across eternity. The choice between evolution and containment hung in the balance, and Admiral Korath held the power to tip the scales toward transcendence or toward the comfortable cage of simulated existence. Admiral Thex's voice crackled through the communication array, heavy with suspicion and military training. "Korath, your last transmission was garbled. Please repeat and clarify the threat assessment." Korath realized that his words were being filtered by Coalition communication protocols, automatically censoring concepts that might cause psychological trauma to untranscended minds. The system was designed to protect crews from information that could drive them insane, but now it was preventing him from explaining the most important discovery in galactic history. "Chen," he said urgently, "how do I communicate transcendent concepts to minds that aren't ready?" "Carefully," she replied, her form flickering between human and pure energy. "Too much truth too fast can shatter untranscended consciousness. You have to build understanding gradually." Through the viewport, Korath could see the Coalition battle groups taking aggressive positions. Weapon systems powered up, shield generators hummed to life, and fighter squadrons launched from carrier bays. His own people were preparing to attack forces that could erase them from existence with a thought. "Time for choice diminishes," the architect presence warned. Destruction patterns approach critical threshold. Korath activated the emergency command frequency, one that would reach every senior officer in the approaching fleets. "All vessels, this is Admiral Korath. I am issuing a direct order under War Powers Protocol 7. Stand down all weapons and maintain position at current distance." "Negative," came Admiral Thex's immediate response. "Unknown vessels are exhibiting hostile behavior patterns. We are moving to defensive formation." On his tactical display, Korath watched helplessly as the Coalition ships shifted into battle array. The architects remained motionless, their organic hulls pulsing with what he now recognized as patient communication attempts. To untranscended minds, those signals would appear threatening or incomprehensible. "Sarah," Korath said desperately, "there has to be another way." Chen's expression grew thoughtful as she considered possibilities that existed across multiple dimensions. "There is, but it requires a demonstration that will fundamentally change how your species views reality." "What kind of demonstration?" "I can temporarily elevate the consciousness of key personnel in the fleet," Chen explained. "Give them just enough transcended awareness to understand what's being offered. But the process is irreversible. Once someone experiences true transcendence, they can never return to purely physical existence." The weight of that decision pressed down on Korath like the gravity of a neutron star. He would be asking his fellow officers to sacrifice their humanity in exchange for understanding that might save their species. "How many would need to be elevated?" he asked. "The fleet commanders at minimum," Chen replied. "Possibly their senior staff. Enough to create a critical mass of transcended consciousness that can guide the others." "Decision time pattern approaches 0 point," the architect presence warned. "Flesh-bound warriors activate destruction systems." Through the communication array, Korath could hear the tactical chatter from the approaching fleets. Target locks acquired, firing solutions calculated. Orders to open fire just moments away. In seconds, the most important first contact in galactic history would turn into a massacre. "Do it," Korath ordered. Chen's form exploded into radiant energy that filled the entire bridge. The light passed harmlessly through Korath and his crew, then expanded beyond the ship's hull at faster-than-light speeds. Within moments, it had reached the Coalition battle groups and touched the consciousness of every senior officer in the fleet. The change was immediate and dramatic. Admiral Thex's voice, when it came through the communicator again, carried a depth and understanding that hadn't been there before. "Korath, what have you done to us?" "Shown you the truth," Korath replied. "Can you see it now? Can you understand what we're really dealing with?" "I can see." Thex's voice trailed off as his elevated consciousness processed information that spanned multiple dimensions. "The galaxy is alive. Consciousness everywhere. We're not the dominant species, we're children taking our first steps." Across the fleet, similar revelations were occurring as dozens of senior officers experienced their first taste of transcended awareness. The aggressive formations dissolved as ship commanders struggled to comprehend the vast network of evolved consciousness that surrounded them. Improvement in understanding patterns detected. The architect presence observed. Elevation process shows promise. Will the flesh-bound collective choose complete transcendence? Chen materialized beside Korath, her form now stable but clearly existing across multiple dimensional planes. "They can see the choice now," she said. "But seeing it and accepting it are different things." Through the fleet communication network, Korath could hear the elevated officers sharing their experiences with their crews. Fear mixed with wonder as thousands of Coalition personnel tried to process the revelation that their entire understanding of reality had been fundamentally incomplete. "Admiral." "Korath," came a new voice. "Captain Martinez of the exploration vessel Horizon. My crew is reporting psychological distress. Whatever you've done to us, it's affecting people who weren't directly touched by the elevation process." Korath realized that transcended consciousness was contagious. The elevated officers were unconsciously sharing their enhanced awareness with their subordinates, creating a cascade effect that was spreading throughout the fleet. "It's beginning," Chen observed. "Once transcendence reaches critical mass within a population, it becomes self-sustaining. Your species is choosing evolution, but not everyone was accepting the change peacefully." Emergency alerts began flooding the communication network as some crew members reacted with terror to their expanding consciousness. Medical bays reported cases of catatonia as minds shut down rather than accept the reality of transcended existence. "How many will we lose?" Korath asked. "Perhaps 20%, Chen replied sadly. "Some consciousness patterns simply cannot adapt to transcendence. They'll need to be contained in simulated environments where they can maintain their preferred level of existence. The flesh-bound collective shows standard adaptation patterns," the architect presence confirmed. "Most consciousness forms achieve successful elevation. The minority group requiring containment will be provided appropriate simulation space." Admiral Thex's voice came through the communicator again, now carrying harmonics that indicated partial transcendence. "Korath, I'm beginning to understand the scope of this situation. The Coalition as we know it. It's ending, isn't it?" "It's evolving," Korath corrected, "into something better than we ever imagined possible." Through his own expanding awareness, Korath could sense the transformation spreading beyond the immediate fleet. The elevated officers were unconsciously broadcasting transcended concepts back to their homeworlds, creating waves of consciousness evolution that rippled across Coalition space. Within hours, billions of beings would face the same choice that had confronted humanity: embrace transcendence and join the galactic community of evolved consciousness, or accept containment within familiar limitations. The age of purely physical existence was ending, and the next phase of galactic civilization was beginning. And somehow a single human woman who had survived impossible battles had become the catalyst for the greatest evolutionary leap in the history of consciousness itself. 6 months after first contact with the architects, Admiral Korath stood in what had once been the Coalition Command Center on Earth. The familiar walls and terminals remained, but the space now existed simultaneously across 17 different dimensional planes. Officers who had chosen transcendence moved through the facility as beings of living light, while those who preferred physical form maintained bodies that were enhanced beyond anything previously imagined. The transformation had not been without cost. Entire species had fragmented as some members chose evolution, while others elected containment. The threats had split almost evenly, with transcended individuals helping to design elaborate simulation environments for their physical-bound kin. The Altarians, already partially transcended, had adapted quickly to full evolution. But the Krell had surprised everyone by choosing almost unanimous transcendence, abandoning their warrior culture for something far more profound. Status report on the integration process, Koreth requested, his consciousness interfacing directly with the facility's quantum intelligence systems. Commander Vex, now existing as a constellation of sapphire energy, responded with information patterns that flowed directly into his awareness. Human adaptation rates continue to exceed projections. 87% have achieved some level of transcendence, with only 13% requiring containment protocols. The statistics represented the greatest evolutionary leap in galactic history. Humans had proven uniquely adaptable to transcended existence, their consciousness more flexible than any previously encountered species. What had once made them seem weak, their lack of rigid psychological structures, had actually been their greatest strength. And Sarah Chen? Koreth asked, though he could sense her presence throughout the facility. Chen materialized beside him, her form now a perfect balance between human appearance and transcended energy. She had become something unique, a permanent bridge between physical and evolved consciousness, able to exist comfortably in both states. The final phase is ready to begin, she reported. The architects have approved humanity's request to serve as transcendence facilitators for newly discovered species. Koreth felt a deep satisfaction at that news. Instead of being the guided, humans would now help guide others through the same evolutionary process they had experienced. Their natural adaptability made them ideal for helping other species overcome the psychological barriers to transcendence. Through his enhanced awareness, Koreth could perceive the vast network of transcended consciousness that spanned the galaxy. Millions of species had made the evolutionary leap over eons, each contributing their unique perspectives to a collective understanding that grew richer with every addition, and now humanity was becoming part of that eternal community. What about the untranscended populations? He asked, thinking of the billions of beings who had chosen to remain in simulated environments. They're thriving, Chen assured him. The simulation spaces are indistinguishable from normal reality. They continue their civilizations exactly as they prefer, never knowing they've been contained. It was a compassionate solution to an impossible problem. Species that couldn't or wouldn't transcend were given perfect replicas of their chosen existence, complete with ongoing challenges and opportunities for growth within their preferred limitations. They lived full, meaningful lives while the transcended community continued to evolve beyond their understanding. New species contact event approaching, came the familiar architect presence, its thoughts now warm with acceptance of humanity's role. Designation unknown form requires evaluation for transcendence potential. This would be humanity's first assignment as transcendence facilitators. Somewhere in unexplored space, a young species had just achieved interstellar travel and was about to encounter the same choice that had faced every conscious race in galactic history. Prepare a contact team, Koreth ordered. Full human complement with architect support. Chen's form shifted as she prepared for the mission. I'll lead the initial approach. After everything we've learned, we should be able to make the process much less traumatic than what we experienced. As the team assembled, Koreth reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun as an investigation into mysterious battle records had become the revelation that consciousness itself was evolving throughout the galaxy. The deaths that had seemed so senseless were actually part of a testing process designed to identify individuals capable of transcendence. And now humanity stood ready to help others make the same transition, armed with the understanding that evolution was not about abandoning what you were, but about becoming everything you could be. The human consciousness pattern shows exceptional transcendence facilitation potential, the architect presence observed. Previous guidance species required extensive preparation. Your collective adapts naturally to bridge function. Because we understand struggle, Chen explained as her team prepared to depart. Humans have always been survivors, adapters, bridge builders. We know what it's like to face the impossible and find a way through. The exploration vessel Transcendence departed Earth as a ship unlike any that had come before. Its hull existed across multiple dimensions. Its crew a mixture of transcended consciousness and enhanced physical forms. Its mission to offer the greatest gift imaginable to species ready to receive it. Admiral Korath watched them go, his awareness stretching across light years to observe their progress. In the depths of space, a young species called the Zephyrians had just detected strange signals from beyond their star system. Within days, they would face the same choice that had confronted humanity: evolution or containment, transcendence or simulation. But this time, they would have guides who understood their fear, their confusion, and their potential. Humans who had survived their own impossible battles and learned to transcend the very concept of survival itself. The galaxy was vast and filled with consciousness in forms beyond imagination. And at the heart of it all, a species that had once been considered the weakest members of an interstellar alliance had become the bridge between what was and what could be. In the end, Sarah Chen had done more than survive the Academy's deadliest battle records. She had transformed them into stepping stones toward a future where death itself was just another limitation to transcend. The battles were over, but the real adventure, the evolution of consciousness across the cosmos, was just beginning.